Welcome, friends. Today's podcast summary of the Great Controversy tells us about the impending conflict in its final stage. The conflict that began in heaven is living its last chapters on earth. On the one hand are the laws of men, and on the other, the commands of God, the religion of the Bible, or the religion of fables and traditions. This is a battle between truth and error, in which the Bible plays a fundamental role. This book, which has come down to us at the cost of much suffering, is not properly appreciated. And although it's within everyone's reach, few take its contents seriously. Unbelief dominates not only the world, but sadly also the church. Many who believe themselves to be teachers doubt such points that the Bible presents as the creation, the fall of man, the atonement, and the perpetual character of the law of God. It is seen as a proof of maturity and intellectual sophistication to doubt the Bible and eliminate its most important truths. It is taught from the pulpits of Christian churches that the law has been changed, and those who choose to obey its requirements are regarded as fanatics. But to trample on the law is to deny the authority of the lawgiver. To reject biblical truth is to reject the one who is truth. To say that the law of God is no longer binding has grave consequences because, as Ellen White says, when the standard of righteousness is set aside, the way is open for the prince of evil to establish his power on earth. It is thought that the law was abolished at the cross, but let us think of the consequences of this fact. The law protects us against dishonest practices, greed, lying, and fraud. It protects property in such a way that the stronger does not take what the weaker owns. It protects life and guarantees the sacredness of marriage, since were it not for the law, whoever wished could take his neighbor's wife. Children would not hesitate to attempt the life of their parents, if by doing so, they could satisfy the desires of their corrupt hearts. The civilized world, as we know, has its foundations in the law of God. We live in a morally weakened world, where license, dissipation, and corruption invade us like an overwhelming wave. Even in the homes of those who claim to be Christians, one can see envy, suspicion, hypocrisy, coldness, rivalry, quarrels, betrayals, and unbridled appetites. Vice, wickedness, injustice, corruption, and scandals of every kind form the daily news to which we're exposed without anything seeming to be able to remedy it. Now that Satan cannot rule the world by denying the scriptures, he resorts to other means to achieve the same object. To destroy faith in the Bible answers his designs as well as to destroy the Bible itself. The spread of unscriptural doctrines, such as the immortality of the soul and the consequent teaching of eternal torments, has led many to doubt the Bible. Others say that the law is enforced on all points except one, that of the Sabbath. Curious to say that the only commandment that is abolished is the one that the majority is not willing to keep because it goes against what they have traditionally done. Those who transgress the biblical commandment to keep the Sabbath go so far as to affirm paradoxically that evils that are becoming more and more generalized are the results of violating the so-called Lord's Day or Sunday, and that if the observance of this day were made obligatory, it would greatly improve social morality. This truth is particularly significant in the United States, a country where the doctrine of the Sabbath has been preached more widely than anywhere else. The danger of this situation is that many of the churches that preach Sunday holiness are for the most part places where many of the principles of the gospel are lived out. Ellen White warns of Satan's strategy of mixing error with sufficient portion of truth to make one less suspicious of error. She writes, "We may cover up a poison by mixing it with wholesome food, but we do not thereby change its nature." The warning I will read next is significant. Through the two capital errors, that of the immortality of the soul and that of the sanctity of Sunday, Satan will trap men in his nets. While the former forms the basis of Spiritism, the latter creates a bond of sympathy with Rome. The Protestants of the United States will be the first to reach out their hands across a double chasm to spiritualism and to the Roman power. And under the influence of this triple alliance, that country will march in the footsteps of Rome, trampling on the rights of conscience. To the extent that spiritualism imitates Christianity more closely, it has greater power to deceive and seduce. Miracles, healings, and undeniable prodigies will be shown as evidence of the manifestation of divine power without necessarily having that divine origin. We may not be able to see it, but the Bible tells us that we are in conflict between good and evil. Jesus wants to save us, and Satan is bent on casting his victims into eternity. It is God who protects his creatures and guards them from the power of the destroyer, who is ready to employ his power as soon as God allows him to do so. Ellen White writes, "The Christian world has manifested its contempt for the law of Jehovah, and the Lord will do exactly what he declared he would do. He will remove his blessings from the earth and withdraw his protective care from over those who rebel against his law and who teach and compel others to do the same." We are also told that the line of separation between those who profess to be Christians and the ungodly is at present scarcely perceptive. The members of the churches love what the world loves. While passing himself off before the children of men as a great physician who can cure all diseases, Satan will produce sickness and disaster to the extent that the populous cities will be reduced to ruins and desolation. Satan is at work right now. He exercises his power everywhere and under 1,000 forms. In misfortunes and calamities to sea and land, in great conflagrations, in tremendous hurricanes and terrible hailstorms, in floods, in cyclones, in extraordinary tides, and in earthquakes. It destroys the almost ripe crops, and famine and distress follow. It spreads mephitic emanations through the air, and thousands of beings perish in pestilence. These plagues will become more and more frequent and more disastrous. Destruction will fall upon men and animals. According to Isaiah, the earth mourns and dries up, and the land wastes away and withers. Even the greatest people on earth waste away. The earth suffers for the sins of its people, for they have twisted God's instructions, violated his laws, and broken his everlasting covenant. Isaiah chapter 24 verses 4 and 5. The language is clear. Plagues and disasters will shake the earth, and sadly those who hold the biblical truth will be blamed for these evils. Men will be said to offend God by violating the Sunday rest. We are told that there will be supernatural manifestations of spirits who will lament the great wickedness existing in the world and support the testimony of the ministers of religion to the effect that moral degradation is due to the profanation of Sunday. Christians will pretend to form the Church of God while they announce that the divine law has been changed and denounce those who are faithful as evildoers. Through religious and civil authorities, they will seek to dominate the consciences of men. Ellen White affirms, those who honor the Sabbath of the Bible will be denounced as enemies of law and order, as breakers of the moral restraints of society, and thus causers of lawlessness and corruption, which draw down upon the earth the high judgments of God. Certain laws having been passed, those unwilling to submit to them will be accused of disloyalty to the government, while from the pulpits it will be encouraged to obey the civil authorities because they were instituted by God. We are also told, as the Protestant churches reject the clear arguments of the Bible in defense of God's law, they will wish to impose silence on those whose faith they cannot refute with the Bible. Though they refuse to see it, the fact is that they are presently assuming an attitude that will result in the persecution of those who refuse in conscience to do what the rest of the Christian world is doing and to acknowledge the assertions made in favor of the papal Sabbath. Dear friends, the theme shared in this chapter is not far from being fulfilled. Today, we continue to enjoy on most of the planet a religious freedom that was achieved with much suffering. But the time of this prophecy will come soon, and we're given the warning to prepare ourselves. As in biblical times, in the face of difficulty, let us propose in our hearts to remain faithful, no matter what the cost, because our redemption is closer than we believe. May God bless you to always be loyal to His principles.